Hi, this is Sue Greenwell with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr from the Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Deanna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Today's surprise topic for you is the U.S. exploitation of Puerto Rico, how they systematically and consciously basically destroyed both the land and the society there for profit. All
Mhm.
right. So, as we probably think of it in our mind, Puerto Rico is an island paradise. And the people there are very peaceful. They would normally have their own economy, their own laws, everything to govern themselves. But the US has stepped in. So, after reading the history of this, which is pretty extensive and not very attractive, I thought we would break it down into little segments. All right.
Okay.
So I'm gonna kind of do an overview of the Puerto Rican history and just talk about that and then other little topics. So um, Puerto Rico recently was called by our politicians a floating island of trash more than once, and that is not a slip up. So Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. All right. The people did receive U.S. citizenship. I believe it was 1917. But here's the rub. The people cannot vote. They cannot have their own local government. They basically have to rely on the U.S. laws, rules, taxes, and everything. So they're economically and politically controlled by the U.S.
hmm
They can't control their own tariffs. They can't control anything. Very ugly stuff. So the people have basically been used as slave labor or very underpaid people for their services. The US has increased taxes. They've increased food prices like they have here. The people there pay four times what we pay here, about. All right. They've control shipping ports, and there's basically everything has to be imported from the US. So they pay about four times what we pay for the products here. All right.
Yeah,
40% of the people there are food insecure. 50% of the children there live in poverty. And minimum wages have been decreasing, jobs decreasing, layoffs increasing, taxes increasing, sales tax increasing, product prices increasing. It's a very ugly and sad situation. Done
it
on,
is. They're
yeah,
doing it on purpose for control.
of course. Yeah,
And, the biggest thing that we got to think about is they're trying to push them back into slave labor.
exactly.
And I mean, we would think that we're over slave labor, but there are a lot of countries that still use it. It's cheap. It helps people that, have businesses. Because think about it this way, they're over there doing something. The US has Puerto Rico for a purpose, just like Hawaii. There's a reason that the US has gone off to these other countries and have taken them over. Now, of course, they tell us that they need us, they're desperate, there's something wrong with them. But for most of these civilizations, they were perfectly fine before the US stepped in. And then once the US stepped in, it has been nothing but chaos, destruction, and usually slaves.
Right.
And it's horrible what, it's been doing to these other countries because they were fine and we destroyed them.
Right, right. So we've gone in to help save the poor people when we've literally systematically created their issues. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So in looking at the history of this island, now again, we know history is incorrect. It looks like the Spanish basically, like we'll say, governed, ruled. It was a Spanish colony for a few hundred years until the US
Mhm.
basically came and knocked them out. We took it
Yeah.
over from Spain. Now, Spain had created a tobacco and sugar industry in Puerto Rico, which was thriving. And this is
Mhm.
like, let's just say 1700s or whatever, way back when. But again, we already know history is corrupted. So who knows what really happened, right?
Yeah.
unless you do.
Well, they went in to take over Puerto Rico for the sugar industry.
Right,
And if you look into the research, us as Americans are addicts to sugar. Everything has sugar, and the big company has a sugar farm down there.
right,
And if you have cheap labor, sugar tends to be cheaper. So there's a lot of things that go hand in hand, but it all stems from them wanting cheap labor to basically poison us, but they're getting mass amounts of money because it's addictive.
right.
So we're just funding them and funding them. So pretty much the best way to defund them is stop eating sugar. Which, what does that mean? We got to start cooking for ourselves,
Yeah,
find natural remedies that, you don't use sugar in, which is hard because, like I said, everything has sugar.
right,
But that is the best way because sugar is going to be the biggest thing that can break down the the need to use them in such a
right,
way.
right. Well, since we've taken over the island and it's been, a while, the tobacco industry has declined radically, but the sugar industry is still there. And we know the biggest company in the US is Domino Sugar. So if you
Yep.
look at their information, it says, oh, in the 1700s, they used slave labor. Nothing
Yep.
about today. But basically, they are getting, we're going to call it free labor or very, very modestly price labor. And then they've got all sorts of stuff. But the US investors and companies can take all their profit out of Puerto Rico back to the US with no taxes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
It's U.S. territory.
yeah, the companies and the people are not seeing any economic gain for their efforts.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it gets uglier. So we're not even like a third of the way in yet, and it gets ugly. So, and this is not the first time it's happened. We're just talking about one instance though today. But
Yes.
yikes, yikes. So basically, what happened is I want to say it was like in the early 1900s. The people in Puerto Rico were given U.S. citizenship, which meant they could not vote, nor could they elect their local governing officials or political officials. But the US president was able to assign a governing board there. So basically, they've got US appointed people in place who are obviously corrupt when you look at what they've done, right? So
Hmm.
they're controlled by the US government, okay? And they're not for the people. They're there basically systematically destroying every industry in Puerto Rico. But
Yeah.
it gets worse. The Puerto Ricans could not vote, but they can be drafted into the military.
Hmm.
So I think it was like 1918. They allowed the men to be drafted into the military, oh so conveniently for World War One. Horrible, horrible.
Yeah, because they need it. I mean, if
Yeah,
you look at it, everything is intertwined with the
yep,
system.
yeah,
So they want it to be where people can go off and be used for checker pieces, pretty much. I
yeah,
mean, they
yeah,
really don't care about who goes into the military. The only ones that are safe
yeah,
are the high ups for the most part. When I say up, high ups, I mean the highest of the highest because everybody is at risk in that field.
right,
And they don't care as long as they have somebody in the boots with the weapons, they're making money.
right,
And it's all, I mean, if you think about it, it's war after war after war. And it's a way for them to control a lot. Also control how many people are here.
right,
So there's just so many things that are intertwined. But for Puerto Rico, they wanted to make it so the women became dependent. They needed funds. They could work the fields. Oh, now they can have children work the fields. So it's kind of an ongoing process. When you look at slave labor, no matter what country, what time frame, it's always the same. They're trying to control them as much as possible so that way they can get free money. Because
yeah,
if you think about it, if they have to pay all these people to field, to cut the cane, to juice it, the whole process, they're going to spend a lot more than they want to. So their profit margins are going to be a lot slimmer. And you know, business people, it's all about the profit margins.
Exactly. And they don't care about the people or the industry or the economy. They just
Mm.
want the money, right?
Yes.
So, they've basically inflated the prices of everything. They've constrained the people through all these crazy laws. The people cannot protest there either. There's basically they're killed or put right in jail. There's no
Mm.
peaceful protest there. There's no anything. So the people are very suppressed. They
Mm.
earn about a third of what we do in the US, and all profits go back to the US, like I said, tax free. And of course, they've then, cut funding for schools, for jobs. Like it's very ugly. So I wanted to kind of, set the tone for this, and then we're going to group it into categories as best as we can. It is really all intertwined, though. So, like I said, being a citizen, they do not have a vote, nor do they have their own elected officials. They have a board that's been chosen for them. So they have no one really to stand up for them, the people there.
Okay.
And
They're forced.
yet they can be drafted, like I said. The US gets all of the profits. And then in 1920, the US created this thing called the Jones Act. Okay, so all shipping has to be done by a US owned, manufactured, and crewed shipping ship, a ship. And so what happened, the shipping industry is controlled by four major companies, all of which are corrupt and have already been convicted of price fixing. All right. So that we already know from the get-go, it's not going to end well, right?
Yeah.
And so all imported goods to Puerto Rico cost about 50% more than they do here. So they're
Hmm.
kind of forced to use the US shipping. What? Yeah. So what uh, so yeah, the Jones Act after the Hurricane Maria in 2017, it was only lifted, I think it was like either 10 or 11 days. They gave them 10 or 11 days to get, we'll call it cheaper goods. And then they went
Hmm.
right back to where they were. Well, the people were without power, without fresh water, without this, without that. Their infrastructure was totally decimated for over a year. So there was no mercy for the people.
Yeah.
All right.
Because they don't care.
Yep.
It helps them because when you are struggling and
Yeah,
when you are at the lowest of low, there are times where you're just going to do whatever you can to get up.
exactly.
And if they push them down far enough, they'll take whatever as long as they're not at that low point anymore.
Yeah. So the people are kept in poverty in survival mode. And, again, how can you advance spiritually or in any other fashion when you're in survival mode?
You can't.
You can't.
And
Yeah,
they want them to be in survival mode because if you think about it, the system is set up for the rich to be the rich and for the poor to be the poor.
right,
If the rich allow the poor to no longer be poor, who is going to do the dirty work?
right.
Because most of the point is nobody wants to do it. I mean, if you gave the everybody an option, they would want to be on their yachts, having somebody else serve them.
Exactly.
And the point is that, you know, they're keeping these people in such a horrible situation that, like I said, they'll do whatever they can just to get by. They don't, when you have kids, when you have a family to feed, you're going to do what you can to make sure they are fed. And when you're in a poverty situation, even for yourself,
Yeah,
you want to try to get out. Nobody really likes to be in these situations,
right, right.
but are, and they're
Yeah,
forced that way.
yeah. So this Jones Act has, of course, the shipping guys and the people in the US have gained wealth from that,
Mhm.
but it's driven the prices up of products. And this has been over 100 years it's been in place. Four times what we're paying here. And in my opinion, we're paying way too much here. So consider the hardship that people there are going through.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit quickly about environmental impact because obviously these big corporations don't care about the land or the people. So we've got a beautiful island and they are allowed to dump toxic waste there. So there's there's military and medical waste allowed to be dumped in the water and on the land.
Ah, oop.
There's nuclear waste. There's military chemical testing allowed there, as well as weapons testing there. So the land is more polluted, as is the water, right? That's allowed. So they're finding that there's 20% more incidence of cancer there in Puerto Rico.
Because there's, I mean, and if you think about what's allowed into our waterways
Yeah,
and what we're allowed to drink, and that's going into their waterways and what they're allowed to drink, I mean, they're just poisoning. I mean, no
totally.
wonder
Yeah,
cancer is completely up because, well, one, they don't really have medical health, right?
yeah,
And then two, they don't have anybody filtering the system. There's no regulations.
right.
And it's very sad because the US is using their idea of we'll make things better. We're going to help all these other people that need. That's how they push it onto you
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
we are the best. We're going to push it. We are the greatest country. In reality, we suck.
yeah.
We are
Well,
horrible.
there,
Not only on this aspect, I mean, we are not good in any sense. I mean, we have taken over a whole country from natives, and now we're erasing history. And it's not because the people want it, it's because the government wants it.
right,
And if you look at everything, the government is, it needs to go down. I mean, for everything it has done to people, it gives you lies to make it seem like it's fair what they've done, killing people off. And where is, the aspect of their punishment for what they've done? There's no reason these people should be living the way they do. And there's
exactly,
no reason we need this much sugar, except for it funds the US. It
right,
funds the government. The government is in complete chaos. It needs money, or what happens?
right. Well, think of it this way too. They're doing the same, like they've done the Puerto Rican thing. They've done whatever they want down there, and because it's there, we don't like really see it or know about
Hmm.
it, and we're busy with our own lives and our own drama here. But they're kind of doing the exact same thing to us here in the US, the mainland, right? They're
Hmm.
poisoning the water, the food, the this, everything's going up, taxes are up, employment is down, all of this other stuff, right?
Hmm.
And it's becoming more and more of a struggle just to live here. But it's a little bit more subtle than it is there. There, it's very extreme, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So, because it's out of sight, out of mind, right?
it
So,
is. I mean, usually how it is if you're not going through it, you don't think about it.
right,
And it's not necessarily because you don't want to, it's because you're distracted.
right,
We are distracted just trying to get by on our own. And that's not saying everybody, because there are people in America that make a very decent amount of money and they could care less. Whereas most people, now it might be more than what they're making down there, but are making about $10 an hour. Somebody put it in, I saw this video the other day. It was, if you're working for, let's say, $10 an hour, you're working for 2 bags of chips.
oh,
Like, if you really think about it, you're not making anything. So imagine if you are basically living off of $3 an hour and they're charging you 4 times the amount, you can't even make a whole bag an hour.
the system is not designed for our success or our
Hmm.
thriving.
Yeah.
So we know that here, and it's tough here, but when you look down there, it's substantially worse. It's accelerated.
Mhm.
because it's been a couple hundred years, it's like they've
Yeah.
systematically created these programs and these laws. And, again, the people down there have no recourse. They don't have their own government. They can't stand up or speak for themselves without threat of death or jail. Right?
Yeah.
They don't have at least the freedom to speak like we do.
Yeah.
Right?
And then, I mean, we don't even have that much anymore. I
I
mean, they're
know.
trying to take that away too. But it's all a way to control the resource.
Right.
The resources are the most important thing. So each place that they've taken over, there's a resource they're looking for. Now, usually it's because they want the money from it. Sugar, like I said, funds the US. They make what? I don't even know. I'm going to say over $77 million just off sugar. I mean, think about it. It's in all the food. The candy aisle is two aisles, whereas, if you go to the healthy food section, it's like this small, and
Exactly.
that's not even healthy anymore.
Right.
So they're putting it down our throats. It's in the drinks, it's in the food. Um, I mean, it's in everything. I
Yeah,
mean, they even put sugar in your hair stuff.
they
I mean,
do.
yeah, your hairsprays. Sugar is usually the most common thing in hairsprays to hold
Oh,
your hair in place.
I didn't know that because
Yeah.
nothing works in this hair, so I didn't know that.
Well,
Wow.
I'll make you some stuff.
Yeah.
But sugar is the biggest thing that they use in the hair products also.
Wow.
And
Okay.
you wouldn't even think that.
Well,
Um,
go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
God.
I know they put sugar in spaghetti sauce. Of
Hmm.
course, it's in all the things you would expect it to be in, but it's in like salad dressings. Like it's in everything. And of course, we
Hmm.
know it's not good for you. It affects your pancreas. It creates diabetes, overweight, this, that. But glaucoma, there's so many bad things that stem from sugar. But that's the big industry down in Puerto Rico
Hmm.
that they've created. So
Hmm.
so or environmentally, Puerto Rico has been like basically a dumping ground for nuclear waste,
Hmm.
like bomb waste,
Well, that's why they're
military
calling it
waste.
a trash island because they don't care about it.
Yeah.
They've killed, I think the number is 11 million people from Puerto Rico.
Oh,
From when they started, I think I'm just going to put the number 1917. That's the number that's most.
wow. Wow.
Since 1917, that's how many people they've killed off.
Shocking. All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Hurricane Maria, which was in 2017. And it basically devastated the entire island. And I don't know if you remember seeing that, but
Hmm.
everything was flooded, everything was knocked down. Horrible, horrible crisis, right? Their electricity was down for over a year. Shh. Consider if that happened here. Consider being without electricity for a year, how hard that would be, right? Not easy. And
We couldn't deal with it.
the US government was very slow at providing aid or help. In fact, they did like the very minimum and they got out of there as soon as they could. So remember how I said that the island was a dumping ground for all these chemicals? There
Hmm.
was no fresh water for the people. They were forced to drink the toxic water. Crazy, right?
Hmm.
Crazy. So, about, I don't know, I want to say a couple of years later, they found a whole bunch of water that had been donated but never handed out to the people. They didn't want the people to have the water.
Yeah.
Crazy, right? So basically, we don't care about the Puerto Ricans' health at all. We've been dumping chemicals there. We don't care what, they drink, they eat, how they live, whatever. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk about health-wise in Puerto Rico was that the women there about a third of the women have been involuntarily and unknowingly sterilized. What? So they've tried to depopulate the island.
Hmm.
It reminded me of Tuskegee. Okay, like they did experiments on the men of Tuskegee from the 40s, supposedly ending in 1975, which I have my doubts as to whether or not that ended, but they gave them all syphilis and they died painful and uncomfortable deaths for no reason. So the women are being sterilized or were being sterilized in Puerto Rico. Are they still being secretly sterilized as a
Yeah.
program? They are.
Well, you also got to think America's being sterilized too.
Well, we know chemically, and there's a lot of stuff happening, but in this case, I'm talking about like operations.
Oh, for that, yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because
So,
ours is more, they're trying to do it more subtly. So usually it's through the
yeah,
waterways.
yeah. We know that the birth rates are declining in Puerto Rico as well as the US. Okay, so we know that, and we're like, oh, I wonder why. It's all the chemicals we're drinking, breathing in, and of course, eating. It's done on purpose,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So there was mass sterilizations in Puerto Rico. I think it's probably still going on. The women did not know. They did not give their permission. It just, you know, there might have even been other things done that we don't know about.
Yeah. I mean, it's especially if they're not allowed to talk about it. I mean, just
Yeah.
imagine you can only get so much information because that's all you're given. So
Yeah,
if somebody's controlling the information coming out, they can't talk about it. How are we supposed to know what's going on?
exactly.
How are even, the people in that area supposed to know what's going on if others can't talk about it? Because not everybody goes through the same
Right.
exact thing through that, especially when they're, men and women going through two different things completely.
Yeah, yeah. I want to back up a little bit and talk about this Hurricane Maria. Was
Yeah.
that a natural disaster? Like, was that just a random hurricane or was that created?
Oh, it's definitely created.
Yeah.
Most of the hurricanes are created, I mean, naturally, there should only be about one or two a year, and usually they're supposed to be in the middle of the ocean where they don't actually hit land.
Okay.
It's not actually supposed to be common for the hurricanes to hit land and for them to be as fast and harmful as they are. So what they're doing is increasing speeds for more destruction because when they increase the destruction, not only does it, destroy the area, the plants, the animals, but it also causes mass amount of people to need their homes to be rebuilt. They need more insurance. So it's a way for them to gather more money throughout the year and then for them to also control, what's going to be rebuilt there. Because if they deem it a unsafe place, you're probably not going to get insurance for that home to be rebuilt. So there's a lot that goes into these, and it's not only, for Puerto Rico. This goes everywhere too.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, the prices of the real estate are like about zero when there's a disaster like that, right? People are desperate for money and they might even sell their property for like pennies on the dollar just to get out of it
Mhm.
or whatever. Or they might be dead and somebody comes and buys the property up. So what we're
Yeah,
noticing in Puerto Rico is really a big division of classes. You've got the extremely poverty-stricken class and you've got the wealthy people. And a lot of those are coming from, say, the US, and they
yeah,
scoop up this property and they live in luxury down there, right?
yeah. So they
Well,
have a lot of money.
they have a lot of money. And of course, the dollar will go further when you have a lot, right? And they're
Yes.
living in luxury while the people are doing the work and suffering.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I mean, I don't understand. I guess I don't understand rich people, because I don't understand how you could see somebody going through so much on a regular basis and knowing you could help even just a little bit
Yeah, yeah,
and then just walking by and being like, I'm good.
yeah,
Um, I mean, I know it's hard for like usually the middle class because usually you're not, doing too much better than them.
yeah,
But for the wealthy, I mean, we have somebody that has what, $300 billion dollars? Who needs that much money?
yeah,
Like seriously.
yeah,
We have these people that they can't even afford bread. And you have someone that can afford many yachts, many houses, and have so much that they don't need to work for the rest of their life and their kids and their kids and their kids' lives.
It's inconceivable how those that have do not help those that have not. But they've
Hmm.
created this on purpose. So that's what we have to keep in mind. They want
Hmm.
this situation because then they can live in their luxury, they can control, they can live the lifestyle that they want, while the people that they don't care about do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So
the
I
funny thing
already,
though for that is, the rich people, they always think that they're in these clubs, they're in these groupings, they're rich. Um, but once they lose that status, they're no longer part of the club and they become part of us.
yeah,
And then they realize, see what it was like. And that's what they need to go through is to see what it's like.
yeah. The tables need to be turned, but
Yes.
yeah, and one thing about Puerto Rico is birth rates are declining. Now they are declining here in the US as well. All right. But
Mhm.
people are leaving the island in masses. They just want to get out because there's really, think of it, they're suppressed and there's no way they can ever live a normal, comfortable, decent life, even if they're hard workers. So they're
Mhm.
working maybe, 3 jobs just to get by.
Yeah.
The medical care there is very poor. And think
Mhm.
of it this way, when the hurricane hit, the power was out for a year. So all of those with medical equipment could not use it. All right, causing, let's call it death and distress to many. All right. The water was not clean. They were drinking poison water. And so when they did rebuild the electric grid, all right, rather than using, say, solar power or whatever, they used, gas and oil, but what? It was shipped in from the US. So again, the price is inflated. So they're paying, I think it was 2 times what we're paying for electric there currently. So we already know how high our bills are. They're paying twice what we are for the same. But actually, it's probably inferior because they have rolling blackouts all the time.
Yeah.
Not cool. Not cool. The
I
edu
mean, if you think about it this way, if you're in America
yeah.
and your power goes off and you're paying, you're on that phone
You
calling to
know it.
complain. I
Yeah,
know I am.
yeah,
Um, but they can't do that, especially when you have mass blackouts. So
yeah,
they're forced to live in these unhealthy conditions. I mean, and it's not like that. It's also a way to force them into these lifestyles of you're going to bed when it turns dark and you'll get up when it is light. You will get working at this time. You will
right.
do this at this time. It's a way to control naturally because for the most part, you need light to move around, to get to where you want to be, to also feel safe.
Yeah, yeah, horrible. So, as I said, about 50% of the children live in poverty in Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
Now, after the hurricane, of course, everything's decimated.
Yeah.
About, I think it was like almost 650 schools were just plain Jane closed. Okay.
Mhm.
So then the schools are not as, we're going to say, convenient for the people, all right, to send their kids to.
Mhm.
So there were charter schools that are, again, owned by the wealthy. They have
Mhm.
a fee. And of course, the fee was increased, but the staffing was decreased. So it was very tough to get into this school. So I am just going to make a statement that the education and the literacy there in Puerto Rico has probably dramatically dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
on
it definitely
purpose.
has. But you've got to think too, when we talk about literacy,
Yeah,
not everybody has it. I mean, it's something that's taught, it's something that's learned. But if you take that away, they don't understand what people mean. They
yeah,
don't understand how to read contracts. They
right,
don't understand how to even communicate, pretty much. I
right.
mean, it has to be verbalized if they can't physically read something.
Yeah,
And it is a way to control. I mean, you can look back even into Europe, when we talk about churches and everything, about controlling written language, that was one of the main things is if one person knows how to read, the other people don't, they can tell you whatever, and what are you going to do? You have to believe it.
right. Knowledge is power. right? So
Mhm.
just the basic knowledge has been withheld from the people
Mhm.
on purpose.
Yeah.
Not cool, guys. So basically, the US itself on purpose has exploited the land and the people for profit. Again, they're a throwaway island in our mind. And when I say our, I mean, the powers that be. Sugar is now the largest industry there. And we probably should talk about sugar and the industries separately, but it is the largest industry and it's extremely bad for us. Like we said, they're putting it in like every single product.
Yeah.
We all know it's bad for us. It's really hard to get it out of your diet. You have to consciously buy products that don't contain sugar.
Mhm.
It's a process. It's not something you can do overnight. So um, the
But
sugar,
if you want to improve the world, if you want to improve people's lifestyles, it's a small way to start. And I think that's, I know it's hard. I mean, even I use sugar sometimes. I'm trying to cut it out, but like I said, it's in everything.
it isn't
But
everything.
if you use something more natural, even like honey,
Yeah,
now don't go to a mass honey because we'll get into that whole ordeal about how bad honey is for you. But if you go to a natural local honey person in your area and you support them, one, you're doing a better job with that. But two, it's natural sugar.
yeah,
It's they're using, flowers, they're creating the honey, and
right.
it's going to be better for you. If you look at the extensive process it takes to get sugar, it's actually mind-blowing. That's why they need slave labor because of how extensive it is.
Yes,
Now, they do have machines. They have created machines that can go through and do, the sugar, cutting it down and all that, but they cost money. So they would rather have people work for free than to just buy a huge machine and do it that way. Um, so it's really about them just not caring.
yeah,
All it is money in their pocket. And
yeah.
unfortunately, there's a lot of wealthy people out there that have that same mentality of as long as I get my money, I don't care.
Shocking. One
Yeah.
time I was in Mexico and there was a bunch of guys cutting down the weeds in the median of the road with machetes by hand. It was hotter than anything. We were on our way to the beach and
Mhm.
even on the way back, they were still there doing the same thing. Now, in my world, we have what we call lawn mowers for that, right? But they were doing it by hand because no one cares. No
Yeah.
one cares, right? Cheap labor. So,
Mhm.
so we've talked about this as an overview. So, I've been thinking about this. What can we, the average person, do? All right. The Puerto Ricans have no voice and they cannot stand up for themselves because they've tried a couple times, right? And what has
Mhm.
happened? The military goes in, kills them or throws them in jail. They don't have their own voice. They
Mhm.
can't protect themselves. So, in my opinion, they don't have legal, like I said, they don't have legal resource. We need the laws here to change. We need our
Yeah.
system to change. Yeah.
Yeah. We
And
do.
we need to repeal the Jones Act. And let's assume we keep the current system we have. We have to give Puerto Rico its freedom. It's my opinion that our governmental structure will be changing anyway. We need to give Puerto Rico its freedom. We need
Yeah.
to
Most
help
definitely.
them grow their country into a strong, independent country like they used to be.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And that's not even just them.
yeah,
We should not be governing anybody else.
yeah,
We can't even figure out our country. So
yeah,
how are we going to try to help others?
right,
So no, they definitely need to have their freedom. Yes, it would be good to give them support so that way, they can get their structure, but it should not be through the
right,
government.
right.
Um, and like I said, one of the biggest ways you can support is one, like you said, um, we need to change the laws.
Yeah, yeah. The laws need to be
Overall,
changed.
the laws, and then obviously not supporting the US companies that are using products from Puerto Rico.
There we go.
If you
Yeah,
cut down your sugar use, and honestly, it takes 3 days to cut sugar out your system.
yeah.
Three
It's not
days.
easy. Not easy.
It, I know, oh, I know. I've tried it before.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, because when you're constantly having it, your body needs it.
yeah.
You'll crave whatever like you like, candy, whatever it is, ice cream. Um, try to slow it down at least.
Yeah.
And I've talked to, I have multiple clients. We talk about, the eating habits. I know it's hard. Eating is fun. Eating tastes good. It's a way for our emotions, but also food is good. I'm a foodie. But if we can just slowly edge it down. So if you love your candy, let's say you eat 5 Kit Kats a day.
Oh,
I know it's a lot. I mean, look at the sugar intake. I think the other good thing is if you see pictures of measurements next to how much sugar it is, you'll realize how bad it is for
yeah,
you.
yeah,
But go down to 2 Kit Kats a day.
yeah.
And then later on, cut it down to one,
Right,
and then cut it down to zero. You want to do it slowly because if you just go cold turkey, you're going to revert and regress because you're just cutting it out too fast and mentally you're not ready for that.
right,
So do it slowly so that way once you cut it out, you realize that you don't really need it
right,
and you're fine without it.
right.
Realistically, I used to like candy. I would eat it, maybe twice a week. Realistically, I don't eat any candy, even that low. Um, now, like I said, sugars and everything, so I'm eating it other ways.
Yeah, yeah,
But try to do it slowly so that way once you get to that point, you don't want it. And if you feel like you need something sugary, have fruit. Fruit is a fantastic option with natural sugar
right,
and nobody's getting hurt from it. Apples are a great option. Watermelon during season's fantastic. Peaches. I mean, there are so many different fruits that are going to be healthy.
right.
You don't need to add sugar. You don't need anything besides just washing it off. Um, going off that, I remember, going to grandma's house, and I'm sure you remember the strawberries. Um, you'd be like, I would like some strawberries. She'd cut them up for you. She'd put them in a bowl along with what, 4 or 5 scoops of sugar,
Yeah, yeah,
and then she'd mix it up, and then she'd give it over to you, and you're like, well, I asked for strawberries.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, you just need
It's
natural
addictive. Yeah,
strawberries. There's no reason you need to add anything else. At most, like I said before, you can add honey to it, something
yeah.
natural to
It's definitely addictive, and I want to mention two things about sugar. Okay, and I hope I don't forget them. One is if you have parasites, which most of us do, the parasites are what cause us to really crave the sugar. So if you really have
Mhm.
a strong sugar craving and you have to have sugar every day, like have to have it, consider doing a parasite cleanse, all right? Because
Mhm.
that would reduce that need for sugar. And once you get the parasite cleanse going, you're going to notice that you crave it less. Now, it's a habit, so you replace that habit with something a little healthier, all right? So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is, a lot of us here think that drinking a diet drink or eating something diet that doesn't have the sugar is the way to go. Oh, that eliminates the sugar. That's actually worse for you because your pancreas still thinks of it as sugar, but you're getting the chemicals in your body and in your brain.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
don't do diet ever, right? That's artificial. So, one thing I know, boycotting sugar could be a way to, maybe slap domino sugar in the face. It really has to be a bigger activity. I think we need the government to change, first of all, that Jones Act, but the whole
Yeah.
law has to change for them. They need to be paid fair wages. They need us to care about them and bring them up to the uh, 2000s, whatever we call this decade, right?
Mhm.
like pay them a fair wage, make sure they have fresh water, right?
Yeah.
Electricity, just the basics of life, like what we
Mm.
have,
Yeah.
and fair prices. But
Yeah,
I really,
I think the other big thing that we can do is, talk about it.
yeah,
Kind of like what we're doing right now is, like I said, most people don't know about these things because it's not in our average conversation. We are so preoccupied with mundane things and or just trying to survive. So talking about another culture and what we've done as a culture to destroy them isn't one that most people want to bring up and or they don't really know about,
yeah,
especially if there's so many hush hush protocols in place.
yeah,
And that's really where it's at is they can't talk. And if you aren't actively searching or finding the information, you're not going to understand it. Um, Later on, I do see that there will be a shift there. So it will happen. It's just the point of when.
yeah,
And the reason I'm saying, the boycotting is why are we giving these big corporations our money? And it's not necessarily going to change a lot in the sense of, their laws, which they do need to change, but it's going to change the sense in we're taking back the control and saying it's not okay.
there you
And
go.
going off of this too is if you don't like the sugar industry, you don't want to talk about the chocolate industry. And if you don't like the chocolate industry, you're not going to like the avocado industry. So each industry that has blown up in some way, shape, or form has a mass amount of nasty things going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And this is most of it's just coming out. They actually have a show out. Um, I'm going to say it's on Netflix, where they go over these mass corporations and how they are destroying the companies too. Most people don't watch it because it's something that is hard to take in. I mean,
Yeah,
imagine, you're not really having control or power, but knowing that you're part of the problem.
right,
Um, and that's really where it's at is, how can you take some of that control
right,
and slow it down at least?
right.
Now we could start, what are they called where you write your name, a petition,
Petition.
You- a petition. Now, realistically, you got to get a lot of signatures for that, and you still have to fight.
Yeah,
So you have to decide if you want to fight for somebody else's rights, and realistically, it's worth it.
right,
You
right.
are helping somebody that has no voice. You are having some
Yeah,
helping somebody that has no
right,
power and is in desperate situations.
right,
So doing anything is better than doing nothing and just
right.
sweeping it under the rug, which we have been for quite some time.
Yeah, and of course we didn't know. Like I didn't know all of this till I started preparing for our video. I knew we had to do it. I didn't know all the details, and it's rather shocking, like how
Mhm.
we've enforced all these tariffs and taxes and this and that, and dropped the minimum wage there, cut their jobs, cut the schools, and none of us have known that, right? We don't
Yeah.
know. So I guess sharing information about this topic is important. The
Mhm.
injustice is like it affects them personally, but it affects all of us in this world. And then we need them to gain their own independence. And we need the people that, I don't know if rule is a good word, but the people that are going to help the others on their island to
Mhm.
care about what happens to the people, to want their health and well-being,
Mhm.
right? That's
You
what
need
we need
somebody that
everywhere.
knows. Yeah, you need somebody control down there, and I won't say controlling, but you need somebody down there that knows what the people have been through, have
Right.
gone through, how to help, and also know the previous culture that can help
Yeah.
restore it.
Yeah.
We keep wiping away these other cultures
Yeah.
and in a very unhealthy manner just to make them like us, where, like I said before, we suck. So I don't know why anybody would want to be like America. And I know we have all this, Make America Great Again and all this stuff that's going on, saying how great we were at least once, once upon a time. But in reality, we have never been great. And we have always taken, stolen, killed, anything negative to create this culture.
Right.
And it's very unhealthy. And I know that sounds very dark and negative, but it's real. And most people probably think that they want to, even if you live in America, you want to get out of the system for the most part. That is most people's dreams now is, can we leave America? But now if you leave America, where are you going to go? Because America's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, it's the corruption that bothers me. Okay. Like
Yeah.
America is a beautiful country, huge, a lot of
Yes.
diversity in the land. The people are cool. We've got great opportunity here.
Mhm.
But the corruption of the government and what they've done to the people is really
Mhm.
unforgivable. And so we have it here, but the people in Puerto Rico have it so much stronger than we do.
Mhm.
And again, we didn't know, right? We don't know, but now we do. So now we have to get that story out there, let people know, and we need the governmental system to change.
Yeah.
We need people to care about what happens to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So anyways,
somebody needs to care.
it feels like a little negative, but we're just trying to get the story out of what's happened. I mean, there's a lot more history. None of it is positive. None of it is
Mhm.
for the people.
Yeah.
So we need to
No,
help.
it's always going to be for somebody's money.
Yes, for someone else's gain. And yeah, it's not right. It's not
Mhm.
right. So, anyways, I feel like that's a good place to wrap up today, Deanna, and
Yeah.
I appreciate your input. And I knew that the hurricane was not like organically, organic. It was created on
Hmm.
purpose to wipe out the island and cause trouble for the people down there, which is
Yes.
again another unforgivable act.
Hmm.
So, and you said you do see it changing.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so it'll go back to they'll be self-governing and like a beautiful paradise island.
Yeah, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
For it to go back, I mean, it's going to take a while. I mean, you got to think about how they take down areas of, the natural forest, the natural lands to make these spots for the cane sugar.
Yeah.
Um, and then I mean, obviously a massive amount of
Right.
land that they're
Right.
taking
Right.
to pretty much fund, everywhere with
Right.
sugar.
Right.
So it's a lot,
Well,
but it will change.
it's going to change, and that's what matters. So we're going to get the word out about it, and we're going to
Hmm.
intend that it changes ASAP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Thank you
mean,
so
as
much.
as much love and light we can send.
Yes. Thank you so much, Deanna. I appreciate your time.
Of course.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.